First, let's take a look across the region. As you can see, eastbound I-80 at Donner Summit, we are looking at a mixed bag of precipitation. You almost notice that we're starting to see some of that rain or snow turn over to rain. Highway 50 at Myers, smooth travel right now in terms of our weather conditions. And then we've got periods of rain and some slick roads there at I-80 at Applegate and Highway 50 at Camino. So just be prepared for a lot of those changing conditions in the high country. Here's a look at our live radar. And again, the focus area has been north of I-80. We've seen periods of some snow in the Sierra, but that really has been backing off. We're looking at the heaviest rain and even some snow north of I-80. So let's zoom in a little bit closer to some of these regions. In Elk Grove, hey, we're drying out right now. Northern San Joaquin Valley not seeing much of anything along I-80 heading westbound into San Francisco. Some periods of some slick spots there, but the heaviest rain has moved its way northward here. In the mother lode, it's areas of some basically light to moderate rain. Nothing in the way of what we had a little bit of, about 12 hours ago or so. North of I-80, well, Santa Rosa, it is rain heavy at times. And for those of us that are familiar with that region, we know places like the Russian River, Guerneville, oh, you just get a bit of rain and things start to get real messy in those areas. A little bit farther north of the Sacramento region, we get into Yuba City where we've got some moderate rain right now. It's more so right along I-5. So if you are heading northbound on I-5 anytime in the next 12 hours, it is going to be very dicey travel, not only because of the rain, but we're going to add wind to it as well. Moving farther to the north, we've seen a ton of rain, to put it bluntly, in places like Redding, getting nearly an entire month of rain in about the past 24 hours. Eureka just seeing some lighter rain right now, but we've got some problem areas developing because of river levels, which I'm going to look at in just a moment. Satellite and radar showing the bigger picture. Big plume of moisture still drawing in from the Pacific. We've got what was that bomb cyclone that we were talking about on Wednesday, that rapidly intensifying low pressure system that brought, unfortunately, some deadly consequences in parts of the Pacific Northwest. That's kind of the driver of all of this. But now we've got this developing low right behind it and just to the south of us, and that's going to reinforce everything that we've been dealing with. So this is a long duration atmospheric river event, and the timeline will show that. Today through Sunday, we're in weather impact alert territory, mainly dry south of I-80. We just saw that on the radar. Friday, we're right back at it. So this is kind of like hitting the pause button right now, and much more moisture moving through with strong evening winds on Friday. Saturday, big change day for us. Valley scattered showers, heavy snow in the Sierra. We saw that live picture just a moment ago with rain, but then we turn over to snow. As far as the valley on Sunday, scattered showers and then more snow showers continue into Sunday. Precipitation since midnight. Oroville, big player here, almost 1.5 inches of rain, whereas Marysville about 1/2 inch. And then we start moving our way southward. Modesto, we haven't put anything in the rain bucket since midnight. Santa Rosa over 3¼ inches of rain. Ukiah over 2½ inches. For Auburn and Placerville, you can see how when that focus area is north of that region, how little we draw in terms of precipitation. So yes, big state for California, but it's feeling like we're two different states right now, just north and south of I-80 because of this weather system. A look at some of the rain totals that we've seen so far. The coastal range, 12 inches. Mount Shasta, nearly 9½ inches of rain. Redding, 6+ inches. Red Bluff, 3½ inches. That's all part of the Sacramento Valley. You compare that with Sacramento, we've only had over 1/2 inch of rain. Manteca and Stockton, northern San Joaquin Valley, just about 30 minutes south, barely 1/10 inch. So we've got a lot of weather alerts to cover. Again, I'm going to be focusing on some of the rain events. In just a moment, we'll have Brendan in to talk about the snow headlines. But the big rain returns, changing mountain conditions. We're seeing that right now. Highway 50 basically dry. I-80, we've got that snow turning over to rain, and this is all hitting us heading into our pre-holiday travel over the weekend. It is going to be a much different drive Friday into the high country than on the way back home Saturday and Sunday, or even next week. Now, we've got this flood warning in effect for parts of Northern California. We've got, unfortunately, some dangerous conditions developing because of river flooding there. Flood watch in effect heading into our Friday night all throughout the coast. And then for inland areas, it'll mainly be through the central and northern part of the Sacramento Valley. And then behind all that, flood advisory, that continues through early Saturday. Keep in mind we have a lot of different bodies of water. We've got the reservoirs. Those are huge holding tanks for water. At this point in the season, very low. Have a lot of capacity. I'll show you that in just a moment. Next, we've got our rivers, and that's what's going to feed our reservoirs. Depends on where you are. Some of them have the capacity to hold big volumes of water. Others do not in the state. Then we talk about smaller places like creeks, streams, and even some of the storm drains that could have some flooding issues. That's all what's going on each layer of these flood watches, warnings, and advisories. Flash flood potential shifts. Now, today it's all going to be about the northern coast and parts of the northern Sacramento Valley. Watch what happens on Friday. This all starts to slide its way southward, as does that atmospheric river plume. So it's going to follow the trajectory of where the biggest moisture plume is headed. And then by Saturday, really starting to lower that risk. And that's in part because we're going to see a lot more snow in the Sierra than rain, which means the runoff and the risk of those big volumes of water coming down the hill, just basically gravity fed, is going to drop off pretty significantly once we pull in that colder air. So again, this is going to be the next 24 to 36 hours, even 48 hours. A lot of changes. Our future moisture still drawing in some really good precipitation here. Then by Sunday, that shifts its way to the south. And so we'll start to see what appears to be less moisture. But the deal is it's still in place. It's just we got the cold air working in as well. Cold air can't hold as much moisture as warm air. So when we have that warm air feed, that just has the opportunity to basically like a sponge absorb everything. Futurecast north of I-80 for today into early tomorrow morning. We're mainly north of I-80 with the heaviest rain. Then it starts to move its way south. Morning commute on our Friday, so much different than what we saw for today. And snow starts to return to the Sierra, but it's still a really sloppy mix. And then we get into our Friday evening. All right, if you were headed out, 4 p.m. on Friday is a very busy time for travel east and west out of Sacramento. We got eastbound folks heading into the Sierra, westbound folks heading into San Francisco, or vice versa. A lot of people from the Bay Area moving their way through the capital city on their way up to the high country. Even the northern San Joaquin Valley and Delta starting to get pretty soaked as well. Heading into Saturday, we're still looking at precipitation moving through. It's a little bit more spotty. This isn't the widespread stuff, and we're seeing dramatic changes in the Sierra. And just hold on, because we're not done yet. We've got more in store for our Sunday. All right, major river supply and reservoir supply, I should say. Plenty of capacity, as I mentioned. Shasta's our biggest one. That is fed by the Sacramento River. It is only about half full. Oroville, fed by the Feather River, about half full as well. Trinity is about 66% full. And then Folsom on the American River, 36% full. The deal with that one, though, it's way smaller than those northern reservoirs. Now, this is where we get into some pretty treacherous territory in terms of the tributaries feeding New Melones and Don Pedro. They just do not have the capacity to handle the volume of water coming in. So if this storm was, poised to hit the northern San Joaquin Valley and even the central San Joaquin Valley, we could have some major issues with flooding. But right now, the warmer part of the storm is primarily impacting parts of our state that can, quite frankly, handle that type of water coming down the hill, especially at this point in the season. Model rainfall, this doesn't even account for what has already fallen. We're going to pick up about another inch to an inch and a half of rain. In some places, even 2+ inches. And for places like Nevada City, still about 4 inches plus of rain. Okay, let's talk about the high wind warning. That's in place through tomorrow morning. If you're headed northbound along I-5, say towards Mount Shasta, be prepared for those very strong winds, 395 as well on the east side of the state. Wind advisory in place starting up tonight for the central and northern part of the Sacramento Valley. That will go through tomorrow morning. Now, here's a look at the wind gusts, and it is going to be ripping in the high country. Also through parts of the Sacramento Valley, we're really going to see those wind gusts come up. That is the type of wind that we're talking about that could bring down power lines and trees, especially with the soil so laden with moisture. It just makes it very vulnerable with a wind gust at about 43 miles per hour for Red Bluff. So the strongest winds still are going to be north of us, but we continue to see those winds problematic through parts of our Friday. Now, you'll notice as we start tracking the difference in this atmospheric river, how the warmer air is in place. It has been amazing to track the forecast temperatures for Stockton and Modesto compared to places even for Yuba City. It's a dramatic difference in afternoon highs. Once that warmer air kind of shifts its way southward and the colder air works in, we'll see much more widespread activity that will be consistent across the capital region. But the level will increase as well in terms of our precipitation. So as I mentioned, this all gets going overnight tonight through early tomorrow. This is our pause. This is our opportunity to take advantage of some of the dry conditions in the capital region, because once we get into our Friday, our Saturday, even our Sunday forecast, it's all hands on deck. Any problems that exist are going to become evident by the fact that we have a lot of rain that we're dealing with. Okay, with this pause in the activity, I do want to share with you some opportunities to get sandbags. Our Luke Clary was out last night looking at all the ways to stay safe.
The rain has been coming down across Northern California, and Sacramento County officials say they've been preparing for months ahead of this first big rainstorm of the season. Rainy days are here again. The first big storm of the season arrived in Northern California with a splash. Earlier, at sandbag stations across Sacramento County, officials encouraging people to get them early.
So that way, if we do have a series of storms and all of a sudden we start to see the floods like we did in 2023, that people aren't rushing here at the last second to grab sandbags and find out that there are none left.
And there were a lot of last-minute shoppers at Rio Linda Hardware.
They wait as long as they can, and then they go, oh, I got a leak, got to fix it.
The assistant manager here says almost all of their customers today were picking up caulk, roof patches, even tarps.
What are the tarps used for?
I've had customers actually put them over the roof of their house if they have a leak.
County officials warn that the rain brings hazards on the road, makes them slick, obscures how deep potholes may be. And here's another concern that county officials are warning about. You see all these leaves? They're blocking the storm drain, causing a bit of a puddle here. With a lot more rain, that can cause a much bigger issue.
If we get a lot of rain in a short amount of time, that may cause some problems in terms of our local systems being inundated with too much water all at once.
Homeowners should clear storm drains and gutters of leaves and debris, and drivers take it slow. Now, here's one thing county officials aren't so worried about when it comes to this storm: big trees falling over. This being the first major storm of the season, the ground isn't saturated yet. At least not as saturated as it will be later on in the year, when big trees like this one will become much more of a potential hazard. Reporting in Sacramento, Luke Clary, ABC 10.
Okay, good information there, Luke, and I'm sure everybody in the high country as well, Brendan, getting ready, because you can see Winter Storm Severity Index. We are going to see things changing over the next 24 hours.
Yeah, for sure. We're not even in the thick of the winter weather yet. And I really like what Luke had said there at the end of the story, where we're not so worried about the big trees per se, because they're not wet yet. I got to tell you, this is on a scale of 1 to 5. This is a level 4 atmospheric river, which means this is a strong to extreme storm. If this storm was happening in January, when we've already had a couple of these big rain events, we would be much more concerned about the flood potential. We'd be much more concerned about trees, even large ones, toppling over because of how wet things are. But because this is our first storm of the year, and even though it's really big, we're not so worried about that because it has been dry to this point. So let's start with a look at the cameras. This is Interstate 80 at Donner. Monica showed you this a few minutes ago. It's not snowing up there. It's actually raining up at Donner. You look at somewhere like US 50 at Echo, and it's clear skies. Sacramento National Airport at I-5, the cameras are frozen up here, but it's clear. It's dry, especially in the Sacramento region. That's because you see that atmospheric river there, that plume of moisture. I mean, this is at least 1,000 miles long, pulling this tropical moisture up into especially the far northern parts of the state. So zooming in, Interstate 80 is kind of that demarcation between wet and dry. If you're north of I-80 today, Santa Rosa, Clear Lake, Yuba City, Oroville, even up near Ukiah, Fort Bragg, Shasta, you're seeing a lot of rain out of this storm. Even San Francisco is mainly dry. Fairfield, Vacaville mainly dry. Here in Sacramento, mainly dry, and especially down near Stockton, Modesto, it has been dry pretty much all day long. We may even see mostly clear skies for a little bit of time later on this afternoon in parts of the San Joaquin Valley. But again, like I said, far north coast up near Shasta, totally different story. Look at these Alert California wildfire cameras here. Eureka, I mean, none of these cameras you can really see anything. Eureka, it's very cloudy, obviously wet and rainy at Pratt Mountain and Humboldt County. And then we got 2 cameras on the bottom, Sugarloaf Shasta and Yreka Shasta. On a clear day, especially from the Yreka camera, you can see Mount Shasta today. It is nowhere to be found. And Monica showed you this graphic a minute ago, but I think it's important to reiterate, especially when it comes to our winter weather, because the center of that atmospheric river is up near Cape Mendocino. It's near Fort Bragg, even north of that. So all that moisture is being brought into the far northern parts of the state, the really upper portions of the Sacramento Valley. That means we're mostly dry here south of I-80, as we saw, and the heaviest rain is on the north coast and in the upper valley, because we're in that dry area, that warmer section of the storm. But look what happens when that atmospheric river shifts south beginning tomorrow. Now the center of that storm, still on a scale of 1 to 5, we're still looking at an AR3 to AR4. That atmospheric river is now bringing all that moisture really right along Interstate 80 into the capital region. So we're going to be looking at heavy rain in the capital region on Friday. And those snow levels, although they're high right now because of that warm air, as soon as that atmospheric river starts to push south, especially Friday night into Saturday, those snow levels are going to plummet once that cold air makes its way into Northern California. So taking a look at the snow level forecast here, Thursday for today, snow levels 8,000 feet, maybe even a little higher than that at times. For Friday, we're still talking pass level or above. Sure, we could see some mixed precipitation tomorrow at places like Donner, maybe somewhere like Echo, but snow levels are going to be really at or above the passes on Friday. Once we get to Friday night, though, that colder air starts to move in because, like we saw, that atmospheric river pushes south. Then we get into that cold sector of the storm. Now our snow level drops to about 6,000 feet Friday night, and by Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, we're talking snow levels maybe even as low as 4,500 feet. So we'll say roughly 5,000 feet on Saturday, and that's when it's really going to start to dump as well, because we got a lot of moisture and we've got that cold air as well. This graph, this map here, not broken. This is the model snowfall total through noon on Friday. There's really nothing there, even at the passes. That's because we're in that warm part of the storm. Snow levels are very high. Look what happens from Friday night into Saturday and Saturday evening. The American model here, the GFS that you're looking at, we're talking over a foot of snow at the passes. If things kind of come in a little quicker, maybe that storm's a little bit colder. The European model suggesting that colder air gets here a little faster. We could be talking closer to 2, maybe even 2.5 feet of snow at somewhere like Donner. So there's definitely a lot of snow still to come. Like Monica said a few minutes ago, if you go up there, if you go up to the Sierra, today, tomorrow, it's going to be fine. It's going to be wet. Maybe there's some mixed precipitation there, but you're not going to be dealing with chain controls. You're not going to be worrying about snow. When you're coming back, if you're driving back Saturday or Sunday or even Monday, you're going to need those chains. Now we're talking about bad travel conditions. There's a winter storm warning posted for the Sierra. This begins Friday evening. We're going to be looking at anywhere from 1 to 4 feet of snow, especially north of Interstate 80. But depending on that exact track of that atmospheric river, how fast it comes in, how cold that air is, we could be looking at closer to, again, 3 or 4 feet for some areas. We'll also see gusts of about 50 miles per hour. Chain controls will absolutely be needed at some point once that snow begins to fall. Travel is highly discouraged once we get into the weekend. So if you're going up there, maybe plan on staying up there, or at the very least, plan on having a tough and snowy commute back down to the valley. Now, this isn't all bad news, right? It's bad for travel, but certainly if you're a winter sports fan, this is not a bad story whatsoever, because we're coming up on the opening date for many ski resorts. In fact, Mammoth and Mount Rose and Heavenly are already open. North Star opening up on the 21st. Sugar Bowl, Palisades, Tahoe, Boreal opening up on the 22nd after Thanksgiving. Now we're looking at Sierra at Tahoe and Kirkwood opening. And this storm, as we bring Monica Woods back in, this storm is going to do wonders for our snowmaking ability, going to do wonders for opening these resorts back up. Because this is really the first big storm of the season. I said a couple of weeks ago at some point that, we're just kind of stacking these little snowfall days, and it helps us with artificial snowmaking. But this type of storm is really what gets the ski season started.
I will say, Brendan, that's probably the #1 question I get from people. How is the snow going to look for Thanksgiving week? You know, it's not probably good for travel, but we're going to be stuck in this cooler pattern here through at least next week. And as far as the wet weather, it moves its way off to the east. So we're likely in a drier weather pattern once we get into Thanksgiving and beyond. Of course, we're going to continue to follow this storm. We'll be back in just a little bit on ABC 10 Plus. In the meantime, we've got you covered with the radar loop and a whole lot more.